Hi, I actually read Snow Crash as part of a class in college, and the class was on imaginary networks, and so we were drawing a lot of parallels between things in Snow Crash and recent developments like Second Life. And I was wondering,
Recent developments in what?
like Second Life, for
Okay.
example.
Okay. Yeah. I've heard of
And
it,
I
yeah.
was just wondering what, I'm sure you've been asked this question before, but I was just wondering, since you wrote Snow Crash back in, was it 91, 92, what has been your response to things like Second Life and just a lot of changes that have happened in the way we use technology and the internet,
Yeah.
which could have never been predicted.
Yeah, 89, 90-ish
Right.
is when I wrote it. I I haven't been tracking it. Okay, so I mean I know it sounds funny, but I went on and wrote other stuff that didn't have anything to do with massively multiplayer virtual reality, and I kind of lost track of what was going on in that world. So I'm aware of Second Life. I hear from people who spend a lot of time there and think it's cool. I don't doubt that it is. I haven't been there myself. I haven't tried it. I've looked over the shoulders of a few people who were using it, but you know, as time goes on, I notice that I'm spending really an inordinate amount of time sitting on my ass staring at pixels. And it's because you can do a lot of different things that way now. You can do your mail that way. You can read the newspaper that way, and many other things. And I just decided at a certain point that I had to, you know, I didn't want to get involved in any new staring at pixel activities because there was a bunch of real world stuff that I wasn't getting done. And Second Life looked like, you know, I kept hearing from people that it was very involving, and I made the personal choice that I would avoid getting really excited about it. So my answer to your question is basically disappointing in that I don't know much about what's going on in that world now, and I don't have anything terribly intelligent to say about it.
Take a look, it's in a book.
Read
your
books. All right. Welcome to the next episode of RYB with your host, Jeff Sinney. Today I have Spaceman Roots. We're going to talk about Neal Stephenson's Snow Crash, an entertaining fictional sci-fi romp. Yeah, apparently it's one of your favorite books, Roots.
Yeah, this is actually the third time I've read this book, actually.
Third time?
Third time. I read it when I was like 13, and then right before I got out of high school, I read it again. And about 7 years since then, so I read it again.
I think the fictional book I reread was, I think it was World War Z, which is kind of embarrassing. I don't even like the book. I just like reread it a few times because it's like all I had.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, that's not a good book at all.
No, it's terrible. It's really good for, I guess, if you're like a dumb kid. It's like, oh wow, it's like we're going all over the world and fighting zombies. But like once you actually learn some things, like, oh wait a minute, kind of fucking dumb. But not the case with Stevenson. So if you're reading that as a kid, you're getting woke. Stevenson got some shit in this book. So it opens it opens with a high speed octane pizza delivery in Endcap Land. So it's full on
the best first chapter ever, as far as I'm concerned. It is like I don't think you even learn the main characters' names until the third chapter, because up until then it's just the deliverator, which is what he refers to himself as when he's delivering pizzas.
Until the pizza delivery is over.
Yeah, which he doesn't even deliver in the end.
Yeah. And so it reminded me of like a movie opening or something.
I always say that this would make the best movie in the world.
Apparently, I saw like when I was trying to find interviews of the guy, I saw they're making Amazon was making a TV adaptation, but you know, there's always like mumblings about that sort of thing, and then they try to make something, then it gets canceled. So who knows?
Yeah, I'll believe it when I see a trailer.
Yeah, me too. But anyways, yeah. So very quickly, he starts you in this pizza delivery scene, which is like this car chase. And there's just sort of this completely nonsensical comedic reasoning where it's like pizza company ran by the mafia. So if the driver's late, then he's gonna get like kneecapped.
Not kneecap. He's gonna get disappeared straight up. Like he just ain't
disappeared.
gonna be ever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So if you're driving if you're pizza delivering for the mafia and you fuck up, you get killed. So
that pie better be there in 30 minutes. Is all they're saying.
yeah, and so he's driving through this L.A. and it's L.A. but it's sort of completely ANCAP dystopia L.A. And there's just and as he's driving through, you hear about all the nonsense, like the settings established as he crushes through it in his little car.
His supremely badass car.
Yeah. And then after this sort of opening, which is like the action sting, it's revealed that the guy who's driving it is sort of this old hacker guy, and who's sort of on down on the rocks, out of a job. You know, the typical protagonist. His name is Hero Protagonist, fittingly, very on the nose. Which I could tell Stephenson was taking the piss at that point. But
the whole book is basically, I feel like, is if you just got so hopped up on the '90s and then he just did a bunch of Adderall and wrote a book.
Well, it was written in apparently '89, so it wasn't
I thought
even.
It was '92.
I think it was published in '92, but in the clip, I thought he said that he wrote it in '89.
Oh wow!
And I think that maybe like I would imagine back in '89, a book like this would take a while before someone would bother publishing it. So maybe it did take a year or two after he wrote it. I don't know. But yeah, so it's basically extrapolating every meme trend about like corporate culture and like America and stereotypes, and saying, okay, so what if the government just stopped working and all these corporations just started buying up land and we lived in ANCAP land?
It's not even so much that the government stops working. It's that it's from what I can tell, it's that the government downsizes. They just kind of go, you know what? We're done with this governing thing. We're just gonna go do our own thing in these like small little areas that are supremely tight security. And
yeah, that part of the book's funny. So it's sort of a dual protagonist. So besides a hero protagonist, the main protagonist with the name protagonist, there's YT, who is a 15-year-old girl, sort of skateboarder delivery person, and so the whole a courier, as they call them, and they the whole meme behind that is LA traffic is so bad that it's more efficient to have people skateboarding around with all this futuristic gear to deliver things than bothering to actually sit in LA traffic, which actually makes sense. So like if this technology existed, I would definitely imagine there would be people like crazily skateboarding around delivering things around LA. And unfortunately, both for legal reasons and lack of technology, that's not the case. So despite it being, what is it, 30 years now? Holy shit. It's been 30 years from 1990, or almost 28 years.
Yep. Damn, holy shit.
Yeah. 20 years from 1990, or 28 years from 1990, and none of that materialized except for LA traffic has gotten worse.
Gotten worse, yes.
Yeah. And so, like, it's sort of these two characters, Hero and the delivery girl, and they go on these adventures through this LA. And in this LA, there's tons of like crime syndicates, and there's corporations who like own land and just shoot people. It's like the whole ANCAP meme stuff. Like you step on somebody's lawn, like some robot fucking murderer thing will just destroy you, or there's just like barbed wire and landmines. It's basically, before the ANCAP meme images were ever written, this is a book set in that, and it's a really fun setting. It's like hilarious. Like there's constant,
I love the setting.
There's constant like jokes. Yeah. There's constant jokes and like and cliches and satire and lampooning of things that like because it just in the ANCAP land you can just have like, okay, so what if there's a collective of like redneck racists and they just all live in a suburb? Or what if there's a bunch of Indian cab drivers who just like sit around and smoke hookah all day and they just hang around each other and they have their own little like language. And it just sort of it boils down society, and it becomes very comedic. It's like it's so over the top because everyone's just in these like ridiculous stereotypical groups, and it's funny. And another part of the book, besides being set in the the crime and corporate riddled LA is the metaverse. So that's sort of virtual reality. So writing in 89, 90, it's sort of a idealized version of virtual reality.
Oh, for sure.
And I was trying to find interviews of him talking about the snow crash, and I could only find like quips here and there. But in some other thing, he said that basically uh, his interpretation of virtual reality and snow crash was like completely naive and silly.
That's what
Considering,
makes it fun.
oh yeah, that's what makes it fun. Yeah. Um, so basically, well, the metaverse in the book is basically like VR chat. Like, what if everybody just got into VR chat all the time? It was just like a bit higher tech and more high fidelity, and it is really popular. And there's
Well,
just people
not
in
only
VR
that,
chat.
but it's like you can do like whole business meetings in this. Like you literally have like businesses run in the metaverse unto themselves.
Yeah,
That like the later in the book you meet a guy named NG, and he literally is like, you meet him in real life, and he's literally like just a handicapped dude with no arms and legs that controls a van by like shouting at it,
yeah. There's
basically.
tons of little side characters in the book that are caricatures and reflections of the setting themselves, and they're fun.
Yeah, but like once you go into his office, he's sitting there all fancy like with a suit and tie
Yeah,
and a
yeah,
and a programmed geisha that
yeah,
massages his
yeah.
back.
Sort of
Like
the whole meme, the contrast between, oh, I have all this cool stuff in the virtual world, and then it's just you're like some schlub in real life. That whole thing.
yeah,
Um,
literally what a hero is, because he's the greatest sword fighter in the universe or the world or whatever. But then when you get back out into the real world, he's just a dude that delivers pizza and can't keep a job for more than 6 months.
yeah, but I mean, to be fair, he is kind of a Gary Stu and uh,
Oh, for sure.
has all these skills and finds. I mean, he's not like a annoying protagonist by any means. I think he's fine as the protagonist for the book, but definitely he's sort of like the kind of person, someone with middle school syndrome, the sort of Japanese term chunibyo. He's basically that, but like played straight, and it's sort of it's like a guy with chunibyo who's like deadbeat out of a job in his like late 20s. And he's like the protagonist, and it's fun, and they make fun of that too. So it's not like they're doing it not. It's not like Stevenson's doing it not tongue in cheek. Um, Obviously. Um, and then there's all these different factions. So there's the Uncle Enzo's Mafia that runs the pizza delivery business, and you just see them as like this sort of comical organization. And then very quickly, they sort of become part of the plot. And then there's the General Mr. Lee's Hong Kong.
Mr. Lee's Hong Kong Collective, I think it
Yeah.
is.
So basically, just some Chinese American guy set up a bunch of little tiny cities and then pretends to be from Hong Kong, and everyone lives there. But it has like nothing to do with China or Hong Kong, and the guy just like sells this meme about Hong Kong, and it's a it's completely ANCAP meme image kind of stuff. And you can definitely date the book because with the attitude towards the Japanese, right? Uh,
Yes.
so the attitude of towards the Japanese in 89, 90 is definitely like, oh, they're on the rise. They're like these super competitive, stuffy. They're going to take over the world sort of attitude that was sort of pervading things back then. Before
Well, in the
very,
book, they pretty much own like the West Coast, as far as I can tell. Like
oh yeah,
they have a spot on American homeland basically at this point.
yeah, and so that's sort of the book, and like, and you could tell that the very quickly that the attitudes in that have changed as time has gone on. So it definitely dates the book back to hysteria about the superpower of Japan, which I remember is like this whole thing that economists and pundits and historians were talking about back then. It's this huge deal, and then obviously during their bubble popped and didn't turn into reality. Now it's Mexicans. Were there even that many Mexicans in this book? Not really. Not that I remember.
Um, I mean, technically, because they call like parts of California the Mexicali, and it's just a lot of Mexicans because there's no borders anymore. So
Oh,
it's
well,
just
yeah,
it's kind of it's free reign for whoever wants to do whatever. It's if you can buy a plot of land, you can own it, and it's just yours. So you just do whatever you want.
Well, yeah, and Anonymous says it's a fairly common trope throughout cyberpunk because cyberpunk was written mostly in that time period, and that was just sort of like a prevailing belief back then, or prediction.
I think that whenever people talk about cyberpunk, they always talk about what's it, Neuromancer,
Yeah,
and talk about this book. These are like the two books that really like kind of are what cyberpunk is when people are referring to it. Not so much like nowadays. I personally I think of like Shadowrun. That's like my cyberpunk, like what I think of.
sure.
That's
Yeah.
a lot of magic game, sure. But like this is, if you talk to someone 40, and up, they'll be like, "Oh, cyberpunk? You mean Neuromancer?
Well,
You mean Snow
if you
Crash?"
talk to somebody 40 and up, they've not read any books or know what cyberpunk is.
Well, that's not true because my aunt gave this book to me when I was 13.
Well, you
So
must have some pretty based relatives. None of my relatives
they like to read, that's for sure.
read Dr. Seuss. Well, a typical Mexican suggestion. Thanks, Essen. Let's see. So there's that. So there's basically the setting is ANCAP, crazy LA land, and it's set. It's like confusingly set in 1990. So like there's people who are like veterans of the Vietnam War, just like running around and talking about like the time, and it's just like, what if technology was like crazier and we lived in ANCAP land in 1990? So that kind of confused me for a bit before I sort of just accepted that like it's an alternate reality kind of thing. So I thought it was like maybe close future, but no, it's just sort of alternate reality.
Yeah,
Wait,
I'm not sure when the divergent point is either, because he never really like specifies like what changes this world to become the ANCAP dystopia that it is. It's just kind of
sort of
in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is fun in my opinion. Like that's a
it's
really
not
kind of
traditional.
cool way.
It's not traditional, and so it took me a minute. It took me a minute to process that this is like some alternate reality with crazier nonsense going on.
Yeah, like you read that first chapter and it really is just kind of getting thrown into like the middle of this whole thing, and you're like, what is happening right now? I don't really get it.
Yeah.
Why are all these franchises running around America? Where's the government? Why can just people skate in the roads with fucking magnetic harpoons and just
Well, I think the smarter reader kind of picks it all up from the intro, right? So like being a pizza delivery guy who goes to pizza college to learn to be the best pizza deliverer ever, and if you fail, you die. Basically, okay. The only place that could happen is like crazy ANCAP land. There's not really another sort of setting that makes any sense. And so very quickly, basically by the time I read the sentence about pizza college, where all the pizza drivers go to like a college to get accredited to be pizza drivers, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is like ANCAP world. All right, so that's sort of the setting. But the whole event of the book sort of, the whole point of the book sort of revolves around Snow Crash, which is
the driving
title.
force.
Snow Crash being a sort of a virus. And it's like a computer virus that if you're in the virtual reality and you receive it, you end up crippled in real life. So it's sort of like, oh, if you die in the game, you die in real life kind of thing. And then they make it a bit way more complex later in the book, and they describe all this whole heuristic about linguistics and that's sort of like that's sort of like the nerdy thing Stevenson wanted to like explore, and he just like wrote a funny book around it, which it's kind of like I could tell he studied all this stuff about like linguistics and like, wow, what a cool idea about like ancient Sumerian myths and in language form and brain structure. So what if I just like make this sort of conspiracy and put it into a book? So this whole linguistic speaking in tongues Babel religion sort of becomes the focal point of the book, and he backs up all his sort of structure of this conspiracy theory thing with tons of citations and references to actual archaeologists and linguistics and people who've studied this. To sort of formulate a pretty convincing argument.
Yeah, this book has as many Bible references as Leo on an average night. So
Yeah, there's a lot of Bible references because it's sort of, yeah, I don't know. I guess somewhat stereotypically, the villain is evangelicalism, in a way,
Yeah,
kind of.
because it turns out like the main villain of the series is his name's L. Bob Reif, and I'm pretty sure he's just kind of a ripoff of the Scientology guy. What's his name? L. Ron Hubbard.
L.
I'm
Ron
pretty sure
Hubbard.
that's who. I'm pretty sure that's who he's
Oh, that
supposed to be
makes a lot
based
of
on.
sense. I didn't realize that connection. But yeah, that would
Yeah.
make more sense.
Uh,
He does come off definitely as this completely caricature. He's a Texan big corporate CEO guy, sort of the villain of the book. And he's the less interesting part of the book. It's mostly the that whole idea about the Sumerian linguistics and language viruses and all this other stuff. And then also the setting and like the action. The action's pretty well written. Well, it's pretty entertaining. Action scene.
Yeah, I read most of those action scenes, and you always have fun with them. Like there's the part when he's in the like he's going north to Alaska and he's talking to the one guy, and a bunch of the fucking rednecks tap him on the shoulder and like, "Hey, are you a nigger or a gook?" And he's like, "Well, I gotta get out of here now." And he just starts cutting people up and running the fuck away, and it's a
Yeah.
fun scene.
I mean,
And then he literally ends the chapter with, "And then it was just a chase scene from there," and they don't even write
yeah.
about it after that.
And the funny, that's the cool thing about the setting, right? The sort of ANCAP setting is it justifies all sorts of nonsensical comedic action scenes.
It's the dude carries swords around
Yeah.
like.
So it's like people are just like stepping over little tiny micronation borders and corporate boundaries and just like blasting each other and slicing each other up, and it's all very chaotic and dystopian, but it's really fun to read about. And the so I guess that's like sort of a good summary of the book. But what were your favorite parts of it, Ruth?
My favorite parts, well, first of all, like I said, that first chapter about pizza delivery, it always makes me laugh. Like
Yeah.
I don't I like I said, I've read this 3 times, and every time I read it, I just love reading that first chapter just because he talks about his car and he's talking about how like when he gets behind someone, he fucking turns on like this weird like grill that just fucking flashes fire into people's mirrors and it scares the shit out of them, and he's just fucking peeling out of parking lots and just doesn't give a fuck, and it's a lot of fun. But then like I like the part where like he's in or on the boat with all the other guys from the mafia, and they have a little the part with Bruce Lee.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So
that
the,
yeah, go ahead and explain Bruce
in
Lee.
alternate history, Bruce Lee becomes sort of like a cult leader pirate.
A gay butler.
Uh, yeah, a cult leader of gay pirates who like sail the seven seas and just like beat people up and terrorize them. And at some point before the end of the book, like some of the characters are stuck on a life raft and they're about to get rescued by Bruce Lee. And then like the whole Bruce Lee pirate crew is like, oh, we're gonna sodomize you, and then an action scene comes up after that. But it's sort of just this whole nonsensical thing where it's just like basically the universe Commando takes place in, where everything just way over the top and crazy.
Yeah, like even Clint Eastwood's a pirate. Like, and Clint Eastwood has a really nice yacht too. That was like how he became a pirate. Apparently, I don't really remember.
Yeah,
But like I like the fact that there's still characters that like, oh, it's Clint Eastwood and Bruce Lee, but Bruce Lee's a gay butt pirate, and Clint Eastwood's just cruising the seas. So I don't know, that's a fun part. But probably my favorite like part of the entire book, in my opinion, is there's a part where Hero he goes and buys like the super fucking amazing bike that's like got
yeah.
like smart wheels that can
Right.
just
So there's another character we haven't talked. I guess the other antagonist we forgot to talk about, Raven. So Raven is like, I guess the closest approximation. You know that game? Was it Hatred? The main character in the game Hatred. Just imagine that guy, but instead of using guns, he uses like knives and spears, and he's like some sort of Native American.
He's an Alouette.
An Alouette from
Yeah,
like the little islands off of Alaska, and so it's basically just the main character from the video game Hatred, and he just goes around and just like slaughters people. And he's like 2 meters tall and just like guts them 20 times throughout the book, and scares people. He's like the
Yeah.
sort of antagonist.
Well, what really, like, he's really cool. He's like 7 feet tall. He's a big ass dude, and he makes knives out of obsidian glass and shit. But like the thing that kind of pushes him over the edge into like this over the top universe is that he actually has a hydrogen bomb, like attached to his brain, so that if he dies, the bomb goes off.
Yeah.
And
So
he's just
basically,
kind of
the most edgiest edgelord you could think of.
for sure.
He just rides an all black motorcycle, and he has a bomb that will explode. He has a hydrogen bomb that he stole somewhere, rigged to his
From the nuclear sub.
Yes, he stole from a nuclear sub, rigged to its brain, so he can just go around and do anything he wants because there's a bomb, nuclear bomb attached to him.
Like even the mafia is like, yeah, we're not gonna fuck with that guy simply because we don't want to fucking blow up the entire LA area.
And so then the main character, Hero, goes to a bike shop, and he goes to get his own nice badass motorcycle after he gets a payday. And he's like trying to wear the cool motorcycle clothes and stuff and feel badass, but he's feeling diminutive because he just remembers.
Not even that. Like he's almost what does he say? It's almost freeing that you up till the point when you're 25, you really try to you try to be like that most badass guy in the world, and you're like, I'm certain that if I went and trained in the mountains for a couple years and came back,
that's a line from the book. Yeah, he says that. If I trained in the mountains and I became like really good at kung fu, I could be like the biggest badass. And he's like, no,
the biggest badass.
When
it comes down to it, yeah, like when it comes down to it, you're never really gonna be able to beat a dude that's 7 feet tall, makes obsidian glass knives, and has a nuke attached to his brain. You just can't do it. That's the ceiling, and you're not gonna go past it. So it's like it's freeing to him, and I always liked that part, especially when I read it when I was like.
I know Max Tojo. It sounds like a fanfic, so we're talking about like crazy, stupid corporate stuff and weird action scenes like Bruce Lee showing up out of nowhere. But it's actually written just well enough, like the prose, the establishment, the writing.
If anyone else wrote this, it would not be a good book.
Yes,
I'm almost 100%.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, if the same like synopsis was written in the same setting, was written by most other people, it would read like a fucking something off of fanfiction.net.
It'd be terrible.
From like high school, some guy's high school. But the
characters would be.
But the writer of this is just smart enough, which is great because it's like you're going through these like really stupid, silly, over the top action scenes that would like fit in RoboCop, and then suddenly there'll be like 4 or 5 pages on ancient Sumerian linguistics and sort of whether the universalist or relativist language theory is correct, and it's so it's definitely a smart person writing a book that's a bit dumb. I don't think it's insulting to say it's dumb. Like I think even Stephenson would agree that like a lot of the things in the book are kind of dumb, but they're fun.
Yeah, like I really feel like he was just trying to get all the edge out from like the 1980s. He's just like, I got all this shit going on in my head, and I'm just gonna write it all down and try to link it up to each other. And that's just how he got a book out of it.
I do wonder, but so it has a few things reminded me of other sort of genre pieces. So there's these characters in the book also. So the main character Hero works for this organization, CIC, which is like the CIA. And you can.
It's the CIA and the Library of Congress mixed together, basically.
And a lot of people who are down on their luck try to record a bunch of information and then they sell it to the CIA database. And like random organizations will buy this information for money and live off that. And that's like what people do. And so then there's the certain type of people who wear like these full like surveillance rigs and virtual reality headsets and battery packs and harnesses and stuff, and the sort of name for them in the book is Gargoyle, and it reminded me a lot of the characters from Serial Experiments Lane, or at least the character from that anime. Who
never seen it.
Yeah, so Serial Experiments Lane is kind of in the same subgenre where it's this dichotomy between the virtual world and the real. That's sort of like a lot of the focus of the whole setting in the book. Or, well, I mean, the story. And there's a character in Serial Experiments Lane who who wears like goggles on his head and is just wandering around real life while being in virtual reality. And I'm like, this reminds me of that. So that's kind of the image I had. So if anyone who's watched that show knows what I'm talking about, then that's sort of the image of the information scrungers that I had. And
yeah, and on Emos, you're pretty much thinking of Google Glasses, except like on steroids.
well,
Like
yeah, not even Google Glasses, just like wearing like laser pointers on your helmet and like and microphones all over your body and just like upload kits and
you basically turn yourself into a walking computer that just records everything around you.
yeah. And the other thing I liked about the book, besides the technology stuff, was the how do I say it? The sort of integration of all the corporations that people know and love into like the future, or well, I guess the alternate reality. So like the U-Hauls, like the U-Haul storage has now become apartments, and sort of McDonald's has become fine dining, and like rent-a-cops have now become like real cops.
Well, there's no laws or no cops, so you have like your what are the two options? The meta cops, which are basically like they're like the mall cops of the universe,
Yeah,
but then you
when
have
I
like
read
the enforcers.
the name Metacops, I'm like, oh, that's where that came from. So like, it's Space Station 13, that little game.
Never played it.
It's just a little space station multiplayer simulator thing. And there's like a joke where people are Metacops. Is like one of the names you can have for your cop role if you decide to play as a cop in that game. I'm like, oh, that's where that's from. Yeah, this book definitely probably had a lot of influence on things.
Oh, for sure. Like this is like a niche book, but I feel like everyone that like kind of hangs out on this weird corner of the internet really should read because it's so fun and you can relate to a lot to it.
And even the virtual reality stuff, despite being written before any of it was developed, was kind of on point. So like if you're in a virtual reality space, you don't have full on collision because it'd be inconvenient. So I just remember when I was playing VR chat for fun once or twice, like you could just walk through people. And so like the scene where he's like writing about how there's just like throngs of floppy dick people and like Garfield and other shit just standing around and like overlapping with each other. I'm like, wow, that's actually what virtual reality is.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like pretty good prediction.
Like if you go into the nicer places in the metaverse, like the one place he always goes to, it's called the Black Sun. I'm sure Leo will love that. It's called the Black Sun, and it's led by like the super hacker named Dave Fivid or so. I don't know how to say his name. I just always call him David because that's the obvious name.
Yeah.
But he like programmed it so like the Black Sun is actually there is collision and there is a lot of things going on in this specific building. But once you go out into the street where it's just anything, you could just basically do whatever you want.
Yeah, and despite being a very dated book, it's very on point to how actually it's basically how Second Life works.
I mean, for being a dated book, he pretty much had memetics on point. He talked about avatars and like virtual reality, and he talked like for the most part, he's not really too far off from a lot of things.
Yeah, and I found that refreshing of a sci-fi book that was old that was on point. So I remember someone else suggested Neuromancer that I read that instead, or like as a different book to read, and I looked up an interview for make like an intro for that, and then like it's an interview where the author says he wrote like this really embarrassing stupid line in the book where he says like the hacker's running around, it's like, somebody get me a modem or some shit. And the fact that I could read this book and there wasn't anything that like jumped out to me as being like crazy, cringy, out of date like that was pretty refreshing. So I came into it expecting. Alright, so I read his other book, Seven Eves, before I read this one, and I think this is his first book, right?
I think this is indeed like his actual first book.
Okay, and so I read this one expecting it to be like not as on point with the science and the stuff, and it just be sort of like all over the place. But despite being in the sort of elevated reality setting with like crazy technology and stuff, didn't really feel, and nothing really felt out of place. which is sort of the amazing part of it.
I did find it kind of funny when I suggested this book to you. You're like, oh, I guess I'll read like an old school sci-fi. I'm like, this is not an old school sci-fi book. This is not. You're not reading, like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, where it's like, oh no, it's a submarine, crazy. It's like no, it's just like no, it's skateboards and cyber glasses.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of even science fiction when he wrote this, like fell into a lot of stupid traps like that for things pertaining to the internet and like space and I mean that's just what happens if when you write something and there's not enough actual academic information about it, or you make stupid predictions. But Stephenson made some pretty good predictions. That's why the book still held up. I was expecting to go in and cringe, like someone saying, "Oh, I just got this SD card with this epic hack on it," or something like that, and or like some guy like selling viruses out of a trench coat. But he actually manages to avoid. Well, I guess that kind of does happen, but it's in a virtual reality space, which makes sense since it doesn't feel. Yeah. It feels like something that would actually occur now. Like people would send you a virus file in like a virtual chat room. Like that would happen.
Oh,
that does happen
for sure. And even at some point they talk about how, or Hero talks about how like. At the point in technology they can put an entire like supercomputer on a single chip, which is just about the same we got now as far as I'm concerned. The technology shrinks just as much as it does, so it's just as capable as I feel like we would assume it to be.
Well, yeah, I think maybe reading it now it feels less sci-fi because basically computers are good enough. Like the only thing that feels kind of ridiculous in the book is like some of the weaponry and the skateboarding stuff, and maybe I don't know, like the clothing. Like that's about it.
And the rat thing.
Oh yeah, the robots. Yeah. All right. So yeah, the robots, the clothing, the weaponry, and the skateboarding stuff. Besides that, everything is like on point. Like there are people who have computers in vans that could run a virtual reality machine now. Like that exists. And so reading it, I thought for sure I was going to feel like I was reading like a really outdated sci-fi book, but it didn't feel like that at all.
Yeah, it's basically just kind of like I said, it's just very 90s in my opinion. The kind of like the attitude that it has is very 90s, and
the whole skateboarding thing is totally 90s, and like the punk the punk rock being cool, and like people on motorcycles being cool. Like that's not really cool anymore. But that's definitely.
Come on, man.
Well, I mean, let's be fair. Nobody. If I pulled the chat and I said, "Oh, what do you think's cool? People riding motorcycles?" Nobody's gonna say that.
You don't think some dude riding a super like a rice burner fucking with a katana is cool? I don't know, man.
I mean, kind of, but it's kind of dated, right?
No, it's for sure dated.
It's like, dated.
This is like kind of like Matrixy in like I always imagine it as kind of like Matrixy in my head anyways, because they're all wearing like he even talks about like when he's walking around in the metaverse, he's wearing a literal leather kimono. Like, come on. Yeah. Like that's just so
interesting. I mean, yeah. I do wonder if this book influenced The Matrix. I'm sure if somebody who's read up more on the production and the influences for it would know. But I imagine it did. I imagine this book did influence The Matrix.
See, Tojo's got my back on this.
Look at the opening to the Neutron. Motorbikes are cool as fuck. But those are light cycles. Those aren't motorbikes.
Are there boomers with overpriced Harleys? No, just Raven is the one with the overpriced Harley. And I'm not going to lie, I bet he just kind of walked up to someone with a Harley and is like, hey, I'm going to take this. And they said nothing about it. Because that's the kind of guy Raven is.
And like, so because the setting's all over the place, like Stephenson will go into different little tangents about like the different settings. So like for General Lee's Hong Kong, he'll talk about some humorous like aspect of that, or when they go to the government office where YT's mother works, YT being the other protagonist, and they talk about her federal job and like the truth serum tests and like the memos and the bureaucratic inefficiency.
Do you want to talk about the toilet paper memo?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, definitely. I did laugh out loud at that. Surprising. So there's one of the main characters' mother works at like a federal government building, and it's sort of like the last bastion of bureaucracy. I mean, I guess everything's bureaucratic, but it's like the last bastion of inefficient bureaucracy in the world because everything's gone into full ANCAP mode. Everything else is just like crazy and chaotic and doesn't give a fuck. But then you have the character walk into the federal building, and they get to their desk and they have to read a memo about how people should share toilet paper because it was just too inefficient that people were bringing their own toilet paper from home to save costs. So they have to put it into a bin, and it has all this. The memo has all this legalistic speak about like what a bin is, what toilet paper constitutes, like the methodology for taking and putting toilet paper into the shared toilet paper bin, and then it ends with like obviously in this universe also the U.S. dollar is hyperinflated, so it ends with like a funny joke about how some employees are using U.S. dollars as toilet paper. But this is not. You shouldn't do that.
Like clogs the toilets, so you can't do that. What do they say? It's a highly ingenious way to solve problems, but
Creative, but it clogs
yeah.
the toilets, and it is a U.S. federal crime.
Oh yeah, and it's a U.S. crime. It's a federal felony. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that's probably one of the funnier parts of the book, in my opinion, is just YT's mom like walking around the Fed building, like just kind of like acting like all of this is just so normal. Like this is just what she does every day.
I guess the only crazy thing, which is funny, they didn't predict is like trannies.
They actually have a guy named Tranny.
They have a guy named Tranny, but he's just a guy. His name's Tranny.
Yeah, he's just a guy named Tranny. So
yeah.
I don't know if you can call that like predicting trannies, but I'll give him the point anyways.
The book, despite being near future, doesn't ooze with like homosexuality and trannies and stuff. So I guess maybe Stephenson isn't Nostradamus. He didn't see that one coming.
Although, in my opinion, he does kind of like predict the 56% meme. Like everyone either like Martinez or Marquise or like or an Asian. Or, like there's no like Whitey's like the only white character in the whole series because everyone else is just Mexicans from LA basically.
Or they're like Italian gangsters, or they're Mexicans from LA, or there's some third worlder because so there's another part of the book. So there's LA, there's the metaverse, and then there's the raft. And the raft is this. So the main protagonist, L. Bob Rife, antagonist, is going around the world and collecting refugees, converting them to his cult. I guess kind of a spoiler, but whatever. Anyone watching this, spoiler. So,
and for anyone who does want to read this, like even if it's kind of spoiled, the way the book is written is why you're reading it. It's not like the events almost kind of don't matter.
It's very high energy and frantic, so it doesn't really matter if you know it's coming or not, because it's written in a very so there'll be one part of the book will be described and a like jump cut to something completely different, and it's like all over the place like that. So you're not going to be able to see things coming very clearly. Everything's split up in a very sort of frantic, like action movie kind of way. It's sort of like an action movie in book form, and it's fun, but it's not dumb.
I mean, it's dumb in a fun way.
It's dumb in a fun way, but the person who wrote it is smart and talks about some smart things in the book, and that's why some of the predictions are on point, and like the deeper philosophy in it, despite being in a dumb action book, is like really gives you something to chew on.
Yeah. All right, so go back to L. Bob Rife.
Yeah, so L. Bob goes around and he's converting people with like this Pentecostalist Babel speak, and they all get on there and they join the religion. He has a personal aircraft carrier. So in ANCAP land, he bought like an ANCAP aircraft carrier.
It's the Enterprise. It's the actual Enterprise.
He called,
if you're familiar with World War II at all.
Oh yeah. The U.S. aircraft carrier Enterprise. He bought it. And he just goes around and collects refugees from his cult, and then he sends them to the country to try and elicit more control. He's sort of a monopolist who controls most of the communications in the world, and it gives him immense power. And he just wants to finish it off. So he's like converting people into a state where they can be mind controlled directly.
Yeah, he starts as I think it's like a TV, like he just kind of runs TV stations.
Yeah.
And then he kind of realizes that like, hey, we can just link all this shit up together and have like an information superhighway. And then once he does that, he's like, all right, now I got all these people programming for this, but they keep going. There's the risk of having them of like kind of defect and like take what he considers to be his information that's his,
Yeah.
and like spread it out into the world, and he does not
So
want that.
basically,
So
just
that's
like
kind of
the
like,
infinite greedy CEO
yeah,
caricature.
yeah, he's a very big caricature to be sure.
Yeah. So reading this book, I guess I could see, like, definitely when you read the part about the federal government, you could see Stevenson doesn't have any like great love of government or bureaucracy. But he also sort of, just because of the ridiculousness of the ANCAP part, he probably is more like measured libertarian kind of guy. Doesn't want like full ANCAP craziness.
Yeah, you never really get like a pin on what exactly he like. In my opinion, this book is kind of just kind of a rant disguised as a story. You can
Yeah,
get those like hints when Hyro's just kind of sitting by himself and he's talking about America. Like he goes to his friend's house that had like just gotten hit with snow crash, and he's like sitting on the roof and he's like, "This is what America has become," and you can just kind of tell that like this is
yeah,
what's like Stevenson actually thinks, kind of, especially in this early '90s juncture of edginess.
sure, yeah, maybe. I'm sure the guy. It's been like 28 years. The man's thoughts have probably completely changed and not bear any resemblance to what he thinks when he wrote this book. So, like, don't let it be some sort of mar against the guy if you don't agree with his politics. And he obviously has a few caricatures. He has like the racist redneck caricatures.
Yeah, they're from New South
Yeah,
Africa.
the New South Africans and the what's it called, uh white pillars or something.
Oh yeah, yeah,
There's
white
another.
pillars.
There's what he calls burb claves, the little
Yeah,
private
Berkeley.
gated communities with like armed security that are their own little mini nations. And there's like South African burb claves and like white redneck burb claves and so on.
I mean, basically everyone's got their own ethno state.
Yeah,
Like
everyone's got a little tiny ethno state, which is fun.
it really is because and especially since like here what's it? That's FOQNE, which stands for franchise owned quasi nation entities, which is basically like when you walk into Mr. Lee's Greater Hong Kong collective apartment building, you have to have a passport for
Yeah,
specifically from Mr.
franchise
Lee's.
countries. So there's just a bunch
Yeah.
of countries competing all over the world, and you could turn a block, and there'll be a different country franchise you could walk into, and it's technically some other country that will be a citizen of and get benefits, which is funny. It's basically taking the ANCAP meme to its logical.
Yeah, this book really is. I'm amazed that ANCAP never read it because it really would be his
Well, I'm not
favorite book.
amazed, but
Well, true enough. But
uh,
I think he would like it, and
yeah,
personally, if you ever
actually,
need to,
he
you
probably
could just be
would.
like, you could just point to like, everyone always asks about the roads with ANCAPs, and it's just like, well, listen, you got two different companies that build roads, and they do it differently because one's the smooth ride that you're just there for the fun of the ride, and the other one's like fast. You got to get there, and it's fucking just straight lines.
Yeah. Um, I should have taken notes on this book, but I guess I have it like ingrained in me not to take notes on fiction anymore after school. So I'll take notes on nonfiction, but when I read a fictional book, I'm like, I don't want to do a literary. This I didn't take any notes, but
Tojo's got it right.
yeah, turn it into a 32-part series of 15-minute short YouTube videos, and ANCAP will watch it. Oh shit. Yeah, so this is before I was watching some interviews of Stevenson more recently. That's like all I could find. And his current sort of main complaint that social media has rotted everyone's brains into being like these barely sentient non, and it's like a big problem that's going to get solved. And it's actually becomes a point that he makes in like his newest book 70, which is really good. That's like 800 pages. It's basically two books in one. I read it in like one sitting. Very good. And Roots, I think you're going to try to read that, and we'll talk about it later in a few weeks.
Yeah,
The 14th, I think.
that's what I.
But yeah, so his new thing is like, oh, social media will rot your brain. But obviously, this is written way before social media was even inkling anyone's mind.
This is just when TV will rot your brain.
Yeah, this is just when TV will rot your brain, or well, not even video games.
Yeah, there's no like the only video game quote unquote is the metaverse.
Yeah, and I guess that's interesting. I don't know.
I mean, he does talk about it later on, like towards the very end. There's still like arcades going on,
Well,
so
yeah,
like in the real world, but that's just kind of normal. There's still arcades around today, so
true. Um, yeah, so I liked it. I mean, it's kind of, despite the setting being in the virtual reality stuff, I don't even think it really focuses on, like, that's not even like the main theme of the book. It's kind of just kind of like the setting. It's mainly a story about linguistics, and then just like a simple sort of hero's journey story, uh, set in like this crazy futuristic setting.
yeah, it is like Hero's story really is pretty simple. It's just he doesn't have a girlfriend. He's at a low
Oh,
point,
well,
and
I
then
was saying hero's story, like the like the hero's
no,
journey.
I know like the actual hero.
It's a double entendre because the guy's name is hero protagonist. So,
Yeah,
so whenever
which
which I imagine when anyone else reviewed the book, it also just led to like funny double entendres because that was probably the intention.
yeah, he had to have written it that way specifically just to fuck with people trying to talk about it because they're like, all right, hero protagonist, and they're like, all right, what's his name? Hero protagonist.
Yeah,
So
that's his name. I guess you could call him the Deliberator.
the Deliberator, the most badass pizza man in the universe. Fucking yeah, but he starts off and he's basically nothing, and then he goes through the whole adventure and he like tries to figure out like what the root cause of like this
Figures
virus
out the
is,
mystery, and then he beats the bad guy and he gets his girlfriend back.
and literally, yeah, and then he gets his girlfriend
It's
back, and that's
exactly like the resolution to like a '90s action movie.
yeah,
But
and
the interesting part of the book and the story is both the setting and its crazy antics, and then this underlying theme about ancient Sumerian linguistics and the Tower of Babel myth.
yeah. Do you want to go into that, like
Yeah,
how
we can
how
go
it
into
all
that.
works? All right,
So
so
you
go
want to
ahead.
start?
No, go ahead. I'll let you
Oh,
explain it. You're smarter than I am.
oh, okay, all right. So the Tower of Babel myth. So the protagonist is having a conversation with this librarian entity who has like all this research on this topic. So it's just sort of the excuse for the writer to have exposition about things, about like academic topics. So it's the protagonist talking to this sort of like fake digital librarian in the metaverse.
There
And
is a lot of exposition in this
yeah,
book too,
but I mean
like
it's not like boring exposition.
oh no, it's always interesting to
Yeah,
read.
it's titillating to the mind. So if you're kind of like a droll and you don't like thinking about things, then maybe you'll start reading this exposition and you'll just drop the book and be like, oh, fucking gay. I don't want to read about fucking linguistics. That's gay.
Fucking Sumerians, who gives
Who
a
gives
shit?
a fuck about Sumerians? But if you like reading about deeper things, then he talks about, so okay, so there is the Babel myth. That said, all right, Tower of Babel, and then all language gets confounded. And then he cites some later historical findings of archaeology where there's this Sumerian tablet that basically describes the exact same happenstance of the Babel myth. And then he summarizes that the Sumerian society, based off of like other analysis of the Sumerian society. So they had these things called mes, kind of like memes, basically.
Yeah, it is kind of funny that how like it basically is a meme too.
Yeah,
It's a
a me is a
self-replicating
meme.
thing.
So a me
Yeah,
is like the Sumerian term for rule or code or like instruction. And apparently Sumerian society had a bunch of these instruction, these me's. And people like kings and philosophers and thinkers would write down like a rule, and then people would pass it on, and it would become like an enshrined me. It would become an enshrined rule. And sort of the hypothesis that the author sets out is that, so this was fine and dandy. People were following these rules that people figured out, but like society stagnated. No innovation was occurring. Nothing good was happening. People were just following these rules, and it was just really bad. And so, like this one guy, Ikendu, comes up with this sort of tongue speak babble thing, and the tongue speak babble thing like touches your sort of core psychosomatic language structure in your brain, and this causes you to engage in some sort of mad behavior, and then destroys your ability to follow the language that you're using before. So it destroys your ability to use me's laid out before. So Kindu did this to like basically break up society and get it moving forward and have
Well,
people.
he wanted to like have like the the quote unquote like Babel thing happen. He wanted all these different religions to pop up, mostly because all of these people like the way that they basically it's everyone's like Sumerian is set up like a computer, and all these people are just kind of just running
Yeah,
programs, and they're not actually doing anything with themselves.
they're just following basic rules, and they're not thinking, and they're not. You can't have a conversation with them. So it's sort of like the same complaints that modern people have about like consumerists
Yeah, and
or
so
like NPCs. Like basically the NPC complaint.
literally every like in Sumeria, everyone is an NPC
Everyone became an
except
NPC. So a guy came up with this sort of poem of sorts or this like meme idea. Probably basically in reality, because this seems to be a historical event that did occur. That like Sumerian language started breaking down because of like some sort of like agreed upon or spread around idea.
yeah.
And basically what I imagine it was, and this is just my conjecture, it was some sort of like nihilistic word trick that made you stop believing in words in general. So you would just like abandon all your words, and you'd be forced to try to find new words because sort of accepted the fact that all your previous words are meaningless. So I
Yeah.
imagine it was like some sort of trick or poem like that spread around, and it sort of destroyed Sumerian society, confounded all the tongues, and people no longer followed the Mies.
Well, I think somewhere in the story it says that Enki, the dude that does all this, Anubu, or I forget the other name, but
Uh,
they call him Enki.
yeah, Enki.
Uh, but he like the one of the reasons they say that he does this is so humanity at that the Sumerian society is very vulnerable to like basically mental viruses at that point. And
Yeah,
so in order to like get
like
rid of this
somebody could make
vulnerability,
a me that seemed good on the surface, but like really fucked up all of Sumerian society.
yeah. So
So in
so
order to prevent that,
he confounds the languages,
yes,
which is it's basically I think he like the simile that or the metaphor that he used is like it's like a prairie. It's a prairie is made up of a lot of different things, and because of it's made up of all these different organisms or programs, as he puts it, it's more robust. It's more capable of withstanding things that happen to it. The diseases.
sure.
So that's the some of the logic they use in the book.
And they also talk about I can't pronounce it.
Deuteronomist.
Deuteronomist, yes. Um, who basically did this a similar thing where they took the disparate parts of Judaism in the 7th and 8th century, and they sort of like got it all down in one place, and then sort of pushed their political agenda, and so that became like the first rational religion because it sort of it added a little thing on in addition. So kind of like how the Hindus, what do they call it? A Hindu's, uh,
The Namshub.
Namshub, but yes. But Hindu's Namshub confuses religion. So the Judaic writers, the Deuteronomists, put in a clause in their writings that said, okay, so there's only one book from heaven. Ergo, if you copy this incorrectly, you're fucking up, and you're not on the right path. You don't have the right knowledge from heaven, and so you have to copy it cleanly. You can't have any mistakes. You can't have your own interpretations. Copy it cleanly, just as it was. So it sets in stone, if it were, the idea, and so it just becomes the first sort of rational like idea structure that sort of scholarship stands upon. Although I'm sure there's other examples in sort of Eastern philosophy that developed completely separately, and obviously
I would.
reached this. I wouldn't know, but if I studied early like Chinese civilization, I'm sure at some point there was like a bunch of disparate thinkers, and then people sort of elevated a text with the same sort of premise, and then it became the sort of structural underpinning of.
So like Confucianism.
Yeah, maybe.
Right?
I think there's a lot of stuff before Confucianism. Confucianism was pretty late into their ancient Chinese history. So there's a lot of other stuff before that as well. But yeah,
Gotcha.
something like Confucianism. I'd have to look into it because I'm not really a scholar on ancient Chinese history, mostly recent Chinese history. But yeah, basically the first rational religion establishes its rules to be about information cleanliness. You can't have anything that deviates from this clean set of information, so there's not like problems. And then sort of the complaint and sort of the thesis of the book is that in crazy, well, I guess Stevenson is saying that in the modern day in general, not in his crazy theoretical land, but where it's sort of extrapolated, he sort of makes it like hyperbolically a problem in crazy ANCAP land. But he basically summarizes that it's a problem in modern society where everybody is now like following these disparate rules and no longer function at a conscious level, and then don't have the rationality they want to have.
I really think that if it wasn't like the ANCAP setting kind of is on purpose for the contrast with like the ancient Sumerians. It's chaos and it's order, and you're just kind of trying to find a balance between the two.
It's a Peterson posting, but yeah, well, he's
A
trying
little
to
bit, yeah.
he's trying to draw comparisons between what he theorizes Sumerian society was like, and why people aim to confound language, and then why what modern society is like, and why it's confounded and kind of stupid, and how we're suffering from similar problems. Although
Yeah.
although it's done in like a very cartoon villain way, where this guy's like basically brainwashing a bunch of people and like killing them with like word viruses and stuff, which is kind of silly, but it gets the point across, right?
Um, psychotic cognition 100, but did people ever operate on a conscious level? I mean, not in Sumeria.
Well, I mean that's a deeper question, but that's like a linguistic question. And I would say, at least this is just my opinion, that people are, at least in their abstract thinking ability, reflective of their environmental language, and so like you can't really exceed thought forms about languages you don't know. Like you can't go past your languages are your thinking barrier, and thus they're your existential barrier because your thoughts define all your actions. So you are literally your thoughts, and your thoughts are mostly from things around your environment that you choose to value. Um, so because of that, people you might say, oh well, there's no consciousness because people are just assemblies of this sort of arbitrarily geographically defined deterministic output of history and culture, which I completely disagree with, because like within that language boundary, there's still like an infinite subset, and you could choose within from that infinite subset your sort of preferences, and then live those preferences. Um, and so it's just sort of like an indication. It's a limitation on human knowledge. So people are heavily influenced by environmental ideas, and if it's like the Sumerians, so like language and society is literally boiled down to little rules, memes, and people live purely by following memes. Like let's say people just meme spout it every day, like on the streets. I mean, they kind of do in a sense, but
They kind of.
but I mean, let's say we took like the top 10 4chan Reddit meme, and people just like repeated them and lived by them on the streets. That would be like a very dysfunctional, bad society. So obviously, it's a bit more complex than that. But that seems to be the problem that the author and sort of some scholars postulate about Sumeria had, and why the latest language confounding event occurred.
Yeah, I really, when it comes down to it, I just really think that the whole linguistic stuff is really fun and cool, but some of it goes a little bit over my head, especially when he's talking. He talks a lot about. I have to look up some of the what he talks about, but some of it goes over my head just simply because he's talking about deep structures and the materialistic and the dualistic worlds and how
Well, yeah, there
before
in
before
theoretical linguistics, there's two schools of thought.
yeah, it's like and he's saying like before, in the Sumerians they only had the materialistic world, but after the
Yeah.
confounding of the
I mean,
languages,
I thought it was
allowed to
explained
have.
very simply. Do you have any confusions you want to talk about? Or?
Not really. Like
Okay,
I've read the book a couple times. It's just like I said, I'm not like a super smart guy,
sure.
so some like I said,
All right,
when I say some
so
of this stuff just goes over my head, I feel like I didn't absorb the deeper meaning of what
yeah.
he's trying to say. I just kind of got the
So just
points.
like probably some people in the audience might be confused how we were talking about like stupid shit like pizza deliveries and motorcycles and katanas, and now we're talking about like ancient Sumerian linguistic thought structures and sort of linguistic structures. That's kind of how it is when you read the book. That's why it's a fun
Yes,
book. So if this seems entertaining to you, interesting to you, go read the book. Like the
it
same
really
thing.
does bounce between the
Yeah.
two, like kind of extremes of dumb fun skateboarding and hey, this is extremely like uh
Hey kid, you want to hear about linguistics controlling your thoughts?
yeah, like
Yeah.
it does the bounce between is kind of what the fun is though,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it gives you breathing time between the stupid fucking action
Action
scenes
scenes.
and
Yeah.
stuff.
All right, so Cognition asks, yeah, I hear that. What I mean is the author seems to think that people were more conscious in the past. I'm skeptical that they were. Yeah, I agree with that. This is just his hypothesis. I don't like wholly agree with his hypothesis that oh, okay, society was like better in the past, which is clearly not the case because you can pull up any slice of societal history and you can see when people are slavishly following some rule set, it causes them problems, and someone like, changes something. Like Martin Luther, obviously, people were slavishly following Catholic rule sets. It was causing sort of like cognitive and social and political unrest. Somebody criticized it. People kind of got out of their stupor, um, and then moved on. But of course, I just have the view that like most of that's just political game, like all the way down. Like everything's
Oh, for
political
sure.
fucking game. Which I know is like, oh, that's like the postmodernist view. But they do it in like a really retarded way where they say literally sentences are political games, which is fucking stupid. I think historical events and sort of movements that get supported and propagated are very political, obviously. And history especially are like political propaganda basically, and for many ancient societies. And this and I think just the thing I always see when I study history, when I study ancient texts, when I study anything like this, like the Sumerians, like, oh well, someone wanted to gain politically from X, Y, or Z action, like gain materially, gain politically, gain in status, and the logic chain hooks up to their actions. I'm like, oh, okay, and it makes sense. It makes sense throughout time. So that's why I tend to fall back on that one. By people, do you mean Anglos and Germans? They probably operated a more active sense of weight or importance besides their decisions that was dumbed down as life became safe and politics is a political game. Thank you, Professor Jesse. Did I say that? Oof.
I don't know if he did say that,
I
but
don't think I did.
it's possible.
I said history is a political game.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, how about this? What were some of the parts you didn't like about the book?
Oh yeah, sure. The I guess the parts that were about side characters who then get like killed off.
You don't like the chapter about the mafia kid that runs a franchise that gets yelled at by
Yeah,
his
that kind of
boss?
thing. Like that detail is like okay, but I'm just not like sometimes I wish they just fleshed out less of the side characters.
Yeah,
Which
I just look at that as more world building. It's not so much about the character. It's telling about like because in that one chapter they talk about how he runs a franchise and he every morning he gets all spiffed up and he parks in this parking lot and then he's got to dodge sniper fire as he's ducking into his fucking restaurant
yeah, it's
because
like
the
setting.
pizza place
I understand it's setting build.
the pizza place across the street has snipers up on their board shooting at them because they don't like them, and it's it's shit like that. It's the little details, not so much about the characters, but the world
Yeah,
that
the
they live
world.
in.
It's world building.
So I don't mind the small
I
side
would say
characters
the sex scene fell out of place.
for sure. That's my like the
The
one big
yeah
misstep of the book in my opinion. Although I was thinking about it, and like when it comes down to it, writing wise, it kind of had to happen because
No.
well, let me throw this out.
Okay.
Let me talk it out for a second. Because up to he needed YT on the raft, and he needed YT on the raft to be safe. So these two things were very kind of important. In like the only way you're really going to do that is if you have someone to protect her. And if she got kidnapped and thrown onto the raft, then Hero or the mafia
But
boys
then she
aren't
gets
around
like
to protect her.
kidnapped anyways. It doesn't matter.
Well, I'm saying like yeah, like
But I'm saying
once she's
like
on the raft.
like even post like that scene, it ends up like it didn't even matter. Like she could have just been captured, and Bob could have just had her there, and wouldn't have made a difference. And not
No, you're right.
even Raven falling asleep would have made a difference either, because he like just
Well,
gets woken up.
they needed a way to get rid of Raven while Hero was on the ship, in my opinion. Like that
Oh,
need to
yeah, I
happen.
guess so. I guess you're right.
Like
But he leaves
Raven.
anyways.
Yeah, like they wake him up with it. Like but at
But
the
he's
very
not even
least,
there by the time Hero gets there.
yeah, no. But at the very least, they do set it up properly, in my opinion. That YT does knock out Raven with her dentata, and they do mention in the book that she's very attractive, and she uses that to her advantage at some points. And like
Sure.
I said, the dentata is set up, in my opinion,
But
properly.
the thing is that the dentata setup doesn't resolve. There's no payoff. Like it doesn't affect Raven at all. He goes on about his business exactly as he would have.
Well, the timeline, the way it works is because Raven's asleep for like 3 hours while YT's in the metaverse fucking around on the machine.
Sure.
So that's kind of why the chronology of this book is kind of fucked up. I'm not gonna lie. Like even like the first 5 chapters, the things that happen do not happen in an order that's chronological. Like the first three
Yeah, it
chapters
jumps around a
delivering
lot, kind of
pizza,
like Memento.
and then like the fourth chapter is like a couple months ahead of the time when YT needs Hero's help, and then it jumps back to like YT delivering the pizza for Hero. And so the chronology of this book is kind of fucked up, and that's why I say Raven he needed to be knocked out for the specific part, so YT could go and be like free and do whatever she wants on the ship because no one's gonna fuck with Raven's girl, and they needed Hero to be left alone because Hero's not going to be able to beat this guy not in the metaverse. I think that was the whole
Sure,
point
I
of it.
guess, yeah. But I still felt it was unnecessary.
Oh, for sure. Like I said, this is in my opinion, like the major misstep of the book is YT getting fucked by a mutant. Especially because I really do like the YT character, and so it's uncomfortable to say the least.
Yeah, it is pretty uncomfortable. Besides
But,
that, then the other thing I guess would be, I don't know. I mean, I guess the book's fine. That's obviously like one of your favorite books.
Oh, it's an 8 out of 10 as far as I'm concerned. It's a strange thing that it's my favorite book, but I don't consider it perfect.
I mean, there's no
consider there to
perfect
be
book.
well, there's definitely better books in my opinion.
I
But
thought his more recent book was better.
Cryptonomicon's better. Diamond Age is better. Like pretty much everything that he's written since then is better.
Yeah.
But this is definitely my favorite, if only because it's so much fun to read. Yeah, for the most part, it's very well written, and there's no like, in my opinion, there's not that many like quote unquote plot holes that like are massive and take you out of the story.
Yeah.
So you
despite
really
being completely ridiculous and over the top, it keeps consistent.
Yes, there's nothing that you're like, okay, that was stupid. Why did this happen? It all runs smoothly. It's a perfect running car. It's not the best car, but it'll get you to point A to point B.
Yeah.
And just fine. Yeah, it is
Enclave,
definitely one of my favorite books.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Enclave talks about how that's writing every fiction nowadays. Bad writing is a disease. Walking Dead is my go-to. Characters literally only get development so that boomers will cry when they get killed. Well, that's not really what happens here, because it's like you're not really supposed to get attached to any of the characters. I mean, I guess besides the protagonists.
When these characters die, it's completely like
it's comedic.
Detached. Like like later on, they're on a ship with like a couple of guys, and all of these guys that are running with Hero all die.
It's basically Looney Tunes RoboCop violence. And you're not supposed to get attached to any character, so it kind of develops them a little bit. And sometimes I feel like that's unnecessary outside of some jokes. Like we don't like there's sometimes like random paragraphs. Well, they'll tell me about like the people on the boat before they get killed. I guess that what I just said that does happen. So maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, Fisheye's really the only character that gets any real sort of like character building, and he does die, but it's not like you kind of look at it as like, oh, he's just part of the mafia. He did his
Well,
job.
yeah.
There's no, and even Hero, like he doesn't have any sympathy for these people as like they're dying. He's just like, shit, that's another guy that could have helped me.
Yeah.
There's the guy with the Gatling gun. Oh, we should probably talk about Reason. That's another fun little.
I mean, it's just a Gatling gun.
Oh, it's a fun Gatling gun.
It's just a Gatling
gun. Nuclear powered, depleted uranium shooting Gatling gun, and it's and they kill Bruce Lee with it.
I dropped Walking Dead whenever the prison ended on that one.
But
people in chat are talking about Walking Dead.
Yeah, I never watched that show.
It's
I
not
could
good.
Not.
Don't watch it.
No, I've never heard good things about it. I watched like
the only people who continue watching it are just like they're stuck in sunk cost fallacy.
Yeah, it's true dramatic of a zombie story in my opinion. Like you should be focused on the zombie.
You did suggest this earlier, so let me try to find the picture of Stephenson when he wrote the book, and he's like dressed for a Matrix convention or something.
Oh, for sure. He's got like the glasses on, the trench coat. He's got his arms crossed. He's trying to look badass for sure. And I had the physical copy in high school of this book, and that was the picture in the back of this book.
That was the picture in the back of the book?
That was the picture.
Like, all right.
About the author.
Do you have can you put that in Discord? Or
I don't have the book anymore. I lent it to someone and they never gave it back.
Well, you posted the picture at some point, but I don't remember where.
Oh, I gave it to you over just direct messages.
Did you? Okay, I'll check. Hold on, let me minimize
right,
my
Anon?
Discord.
How do you just say just a Gatling gun? It's a badass Gatling.
It's just a Gatling gun, all right.
Gatling gun. All the guns in this, like they even talk about how like what's the one gun that they have on top of the Enterprise that like it literally is shooting like 20mm shells at
I know about that thing. I played Battlefield 2.
And that's another fun part where like he's literally like running across boats as they're just shooting these giant guns at him.
Yeah, the action's very high octane and very well written. And like the whole thing's just well written despite being ridiculous. All right, let me get this picture.
Like I said earlier, no one else could have written this book for sure. Like this is a Neal Stephenson original. If someone else tried to write this book, it would have turned out boring and confusing and unlikable characters.
Right, so I put that picture of Neal below a 3. It looks like he's a character out of Clerks.
Yeah, he does look like Dante a little bit. I'm not gonna lie, with like the goatee. Yeah,
So this is what he looked like when he wrote the book, and obviously you could kind of tell what state of mind he was in when he wrote the book. It definitely reflects that. And he's obviously mellowed out and been 28 years and written a lot more serious.
For sure, you look at him now, and he just seems like kind of like a normal like college professor, in my opinion. Like he's just kind of like that guy. You see him, talking about a lot of math stuffs. And you're just like, oh, cool, thanks, professor.
Yeah.
But back then you could definitely tell he was edgy as fuck. Like he was the edgelord of the 90s. And it really comes across in his writing, in my opinion. I know I've said that, but it's a very quintessentially 90s, in my opinion, book. Some of you guys are all right.
Some of you guys are all right. Don't go to McDonald's
don't go to the Matrix
tomorrow.
Convention. Yeah, don't go to the Matrix convention tomorrow.
Yeah.
Don't watch.
And yeah, but, I think we were talking earlier about how we were trying to get a pin on the guy, on his like beliefs as we read the book, and obviously he just sort of he was very solidly in like 90s counterculture liberalism, where like fucking dumb rednecks and dumb corporations and dumb government.
Yeah, it's all about punk rock and skateboarding and being on the fringe of things.
Fringe is fucking cool.
He's a hacker, man. He's got, he's gonna go into the gut of the system, and he's gonna make it his world, not yours, man.
Yeah, that's what I like about it. It does have that whole 90s feel. It feels like a 90s film.
Yeah, I
Especially
still
some
don't.
parts at the end, like where all the skateboarders band together and
Oh yeah, we should talk about that. All right,
all the
so
skateboarders in town band together and say,
YT gets kidnapped by Elbob Rife, and they put her on the raft, and then they take her off the raft, and they got to get back to Texas or whatever.
yeah,
So they fly over LA, and they like put down like next to this one franchise, so they could, because somehow the like the communications monopolist of the world has to use a pay telephone to call someone, which I thought was fucking hilarious. Probably one of the funniest parts of the book. But he has
because
to make
his phone was getting hacked.
yeah.
They had to land the helicopter and use a payphone.
So while he lands the helicopter, YT manages to like see another courier, and she's like, "Hey, help me!" And the way that he's like, "Man, that girl is getting her vibe harshed major," and it's such a like
Yeah,
90s speak. Like
everything
whenever
about it.
whenever YT's like skating around, she's like, "Man, I am just creaming this Crete. I'm just fucking all about it, bro."
All the punks band together and beat the man, bro.
Yeah, and so she gets this courier, and he calls in a code, bro. It's a serious thing, man. And so all the couriers in LA
Yeah.
somehow find out where this
Have you ever played
helicopter
the
is.
game Liberal Crime Squad?
I've not.
It's basically like this book is basically that game. So in Liberal Crime Squad, you play as like a vigilante, and you go around and you like beat the shit out of conservatives. You got like a hippie ragtag movement. It's just like this silly. It's the guy who made Dwarf Fortress made this like silly little roguelike game, and it's like full of like stupid slogans, and you go around and like recruit hobos and shit. And it just like that. Basically, that game is like set in this book.
No, for sure. Like I was telling you earlier, I really like whenever people ask him if there's ever going to be a sequel to Snow Crash, he's always just like, no, it's not going to happen.
I don't think it needs a sequel.
I would agree with you. It doesn't need a sequel, but I would really like just to see another book set in this universe. I don't need
know.
to see YT.
I don't think so.
I don't need to see YT or Hero or anything. I just kind of want to see like more of the stupid franchises, like what they're.
Well, now
what
it's
they're
out, but
doing.
now it is actually outdated though.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Like
it wouldn't. It would be fun, but it would be much less poignant, right? Because it has no bearing on reality anymore. Like I could see like sort of the extrapolation from when it was written, and the sort of the idea, but now it's sort of like the corporations have one.
yeah.
So
we do live in this. It's just we still got the government.
Yeah.
Above all else, I guess.
And that's I really liked reading Seven Eves because it was a book written very recently. I think like 2016 or so.
Yeah, I think it's at 2015.
2015. And it's much more contemporary and talks about contemporary problems, ideas, and things. What's funny is that he takes a very apolitical stance in Seven Eves, and then like people would still fucking complained in the section, gave it like 1 star because he doesn't make like he kind of takes the piss out of some like social scientist characters, and
Gotcha.
because it's not like this like it's an apocalypse situation, so like social sciences are kind of fucking useless for the most part, and so he kind of takes the piss out of them.
Right now?
Yeah.
The moon's about to drop on the Earth. How do you feel about that?
Yeah.
It's pointless.
And then like I was reading in reviews, somebody's like, just wow, he's just like making a caricature of he's just straw manning the social sciences. What a fucking dumb bigot retard.
What a dumb bigot.
Something like that.
I'm pretty sure Neal Stephenson's much smarter than most authors nowadays. Like you can tell that when he's writing. Like I keep bringing up Cryptonomicon, but there's literally parts in that book that kind of become incomprehensible to me because he's literally talking about like theta functions and how you calculate a theta function in your head as opposed to on a computer.
Interesting.
And it gets to a point where you're really like, all right, dude.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of things about that book, and if X Gen Time ever comes back, I'll probably read it. Yeah, because I think the only person who could really explain it to me is that man. So
for sure. I'm pretty sure I said that in Discord. That dude is the biggest brain nibba.
Yeah.
But I still really enjoyed Cryptonomicon, even if I couldn't get some of the math stuff. Like, because they would talk about the Enigma code and how you crack the Enigma code, and I
Yeah.
thought that was really cool. But then he would
And
go
Seven
really
Eves
into the
talks a lot about the physics and stuff, and he does it in a way that doesn't feel completely like unapproachable to the layman. Pretty good.
yeah, and it's not copy paste either. You can
No,
tell that
yeah.
he actually understands it.
He understands it, and he took the time to try and make it as readable as he can.
Yeah, for sure.
Which I'm sure to many modern audience boomers who don't like read books or care about science or things, they'd be like, "Wow, I can't like who cares about this nerd shit?" But definitely, it's pretty readable, pretty good.
Yeah, this is definitely like Neal Stephenson's definitely the type of like author that you hand to people that don't like to read, in my opinion, because it's fun. There's nowhere in these books that you're really like
Uh
kind of logging through it, and
no,
you
I
can hand
disagree. I don't think you should hand
really.
this book to someone who doesn't like it. Well, maybe, but I think they'd read it, but they wouldn't get it, right?
You think
Yeah,
well, here's the thing: is
they would just think it's like a dumb action book.
I think you are the second person that I've ever gotten to read this book,
Yeah.
because every time I've ever tried to get, actually third, scratch that, third person I've ever got to read this book. I got my friend in high
That's
school
what I'm
to read it,
saying.
and
What I'm saying is you should give it to people who are apprehensive about reading books. Like they want to read books, but they're just like conditioned not to. That sort of
yes,
thing. Not
that's
people who like are normies and just don't read books. I
yeah.
wouldn't say that.
If the person goes, ugh, I hate reading, don't hand them this book. If they go, ugh, I can't find anything to read, you hand them this book.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. This would be definitely a good Stevenson in general. If you're unstimulated by the concept of reading, you should
For
probably
sure.
read some Stevenson.
Like
And I would just suggest not the book that we're reading today, but Seven Eves. It's contemporary hard sci-fi, really well written. Just go read that.
I would be the opposite. I would suggest Snow Crash to just about anyone who wants to read, because I fucking love this book and it's
It's
fun.
cool, yeah.
And I think there's a lot of like ideas in it that people should like at least think about.
Yeah,
Maybe not, take to heart, but just have a pondering thought for a little while after you read this book. It definitely it gets the juices flowing, the almonds activated.
Alice in Chains plays in the distance. I think he's referring to the Stevenson
The,
picture.
yeah, probably.
All right. Well, I guess that as we've exhausted relevant discussion, there's some other stuff I guess in the book, but it's mostly like just jokes and like little
Yeah, I'm trying
action
to
set
think.
pieces or things like
Yeah,
that.
for the most part, we covered it all. I mean, another complaint about the book is that the main character is actually half Asian, half black, and he gets a little fetishistic with like hero working out. Like, there's a couple parts where like he's talking about how he's working out and like the sweat drips down his cleavage, and you're
I
like, all
mean,
right,
whatever.
guy.
That's just physical description. That's not gay. No homo.
It gets
It's not gay.
slightly
It
homoerotic.
doesn't talk about its bulge. All right. It's
No, you're
fine.
right. You're right.
Nothing's gay about it. It's just a human form. Okay, Roots. Put
It's
it
just
down.
the human. Okay, my bad.
It
My
sounded
bad.
like an acid trip. Not gonna lie. Well, yeah, when you read it, it's very much kind of like that. It's like it jumps all over the place in a ridiculous setting, and it meanders between crazy cartoony action scene and deep philosophy, which is fun. So,
Yeah, it comes in waves. It hits you with something big, and then it goes to
from our description, it might sound like it would be hard to read, but no, it's not. The prose is very flows. It's very easy to read.
oh, this is one of the like I've said this fucking 15 times so far, but it's a fun book to read. Like,
Yeah,
far more than
I had
most shit.
fun reading this book.
You read it and you're like, okay, I like this character. Okay, that was a cool scene. Okay, that's a lot of information.
Yeah.
But none of it ever bogs down in and of itself. It keeps it flowing.
Which is amazing because there'll be like 7 pages describing ancient Sumerian linguistics and doesn't feel out of place. And you go through the 7 pages about ancient Sumerian linguistics and be like, okay. Which is an amazing feat of writing.
For sure.
Yeah.
Like I have nothing but praise for Neal Stephenson as an
author.
author.
So people, when I was reading the reviews against Stephenson, it's mostly like people saying they don't like him. He's like, oh, he just tells, it doesn't show. He's not like a good writer. He's not nuanced enough. But fuck that. You don't need nuance. I think the sort of the meta beats he accomplishes of his books. Like this book being able to integrate a fucking advanced sort of linguistics conspiracy theory into a goofy '90s action movie is really good. And then for his other book, Seven Eves, I guess I can't say it without spoiling it, but how he
I would
accomplishes
prefer if you
the
didn't. I would
ending.
prefer if you
I'm not going to
didn't.
spoil it, but I'm just gonna
Okay.
say how he accomplishes the ending of the first book without breaking the suspension of disbelief is great. It's amazing.
Okay.
That's all I'll say.
Yeah, he never breaks the suspension of disbelief. There's never a point when you're like completely drawn out of the book. You know, it's like I said, I got nothing but praise for
Yeah,
Stephenson as an author.
I was looking through different interviews, and in one of them he said that in the first 15 pages of the book you can say whatever the fuck you want, and people will just buy that. But then after that, they're looking for any logic that goes against the first 15 pages of the book.
Oh, that's actually a pretty good way of looking at it.
So that's what the first 15 pages of the crazy pizza chase sets it as the standard, and he like stays in that standard,
Yes.
and it
Yeah, he never
works.
deviates from the deliberator.
Yeah,
You always get the deliberator. It's in there.
yeah,
But
it was refreshing because I can't recall like something that's exactly like this.
oh, it's unique. It's definitely a unique book. You'll never really read something like
Like
it
there's
again.
people who have like settings kind of like this, but not really, or who try to do like the comedic satiric action thing, but it always like falls short.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to like pull punches. They're not really trying.
Yeah,
You know, they don't.
they don't follow through. They don't embrace the retardation.
Yeah, you need to go.
Full
What's the
retard.
yeah, like you know, in films, you got to embrace the schlock. You know, it's just it is a
Yeah,
part of it. You know, it's not. You know, you don't handle it. You know, like oh, maybe we should pull back on this part a little bit. Maybe we shouldn't have like complete lawlessness and all these. It's like no, that doesn't work in this universe. We need to go balls to the wall. Like it's important that all this is fully fleshed out and it's almost to its extreme.
and that's why it makes me more critical of I guess soft dystopia, where there's just sort of it's like the normal society except there's like people living in close apartments, or there's like a slum over there and like the waste and like the garbage heap. Like
Oh, those people don't live as well as these people. It's a dystopia.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I hear you. Like this is a fully realized world. Like you know, you go into it knowing exactly what it is, and there's never a point when the world, you know, doesn't make sense or kind of lessens itself onto the story. It keeps going fully down the rabbit hole.
yeah. And there's like it may feel a little bit dated, and definitely from sort of the abstract views the author is coming from. Those are certainly dated, but the technology and then sort of the writing and such, it doesn't. I think reading it now, it doesn't feel dated just because we have a lot of that technology now. And I think that
Yeah,
that improves the reading.
I plan on reading this book again in like another decade just to see like get
No,
the
Toja, we're
kind of
saying that there's other writers who make dystopias, and it's like stupid. Like they're
get
saying that okay, outside of LA in the junkyard, there's like some poor people, like homeless people live. Like, all right, that's like this is a full dystopia where people are just like that. Like there is no rule of law. That's actual dystopia.
yeah, this is a fully realized dystopia. This isn't, no kitty corner fucking bullshit of like, oh, some people are poor, some
Some
people have
people get
robot
spied
arms.
on.
Yeah, like it's
Oh, you can't leave the compound, or else you might go into the real world.
yeah, it's just, it is what it is, and there's no yeah, like I said, no pulling the punches.
Yeah,
Um but I do understand what people say when like they're reviewing the books, and he says he tells instead of shows. Uh at
he
least not so
does.
much in this book. In other books, his whole writing style kind of gets different, in my opinion. Like in Crypto, I keep bringing up Cryptonomicon, but
Nomicon.
he like a lot of the action scenes, you kind of like read the beginning of the action scene and then he ends the chapter, and then like 3 chapters later you'll pick up with that character after like what happened, and so you kind of skip almost the entire action scene.
Well, there's no
But
point
it's
in message retracting Tojo because then it'll just show up on the screen.
yeah, yeah, like we already saw it.
Got him. But yeah, like especially in Seven Eves, he'll just go on for like 6 or 7 pages describing some physical process about like delta V and some shit.
Yeah, he definitely again, he's got a unique way of writing.
Yeah, and that's fine.
But,
all right, so big oof. Oh yeah, making fun of Tojo. All right, well, that's about it. Next week we'll be doing "Conspiracy Against the Human Race" by Thomas Ligotti. So if that interests you, I'll be talking about that book with Diogenes. Apparently, it's like a real nihilistic, like black-pilled edgelord poetry meme. That sounds interesting.
I'm good on that. I'm good on the black pills. I will be reading Seven Eves for the next couple weeks.
It's good. It's really good. I read it in like one day.
Yeah, not all of us are neat, so it's going to take us a little bit of time.
I just sat down and like 14 hours passed and I read the book.
I mean, it is fun when you can find a book like that, though. It's
it was really it was a good feeling. It's been a while.
So I'm glad I got you into the Stephenson.
Plausible deniability. Oh, okay. I see, Tojo.
I mean, it'll still show up earlier. Like he has it on the screen, so it's gonna show up earlier in the video, and then it's gonna just everyone's gonna see it. Still. It's documented for all time, my dude. I don't know what you're trying to
So
do.
we have stuff booked out for a while. Until the 14th. So we'll at least have a weekly show. But if anyone wants any books we can stick on Wednesdays or for feature further into December, please don't hesitate to say so in chat, and we'll try to arrange anything you want to read. I'm kind of leaning more towards fiction. My sort of biases coming into making this show is like, oh, I just want to read nonfiction, fuck fiction. But it's sort of been reawakened. My love of fiction.
I've always been a fiction reader. That's I've read mostly fiction. I've read a couple like books about Rome and stuff, just because I'm a Rome baboo a bit. But if you ever want someone to read more fiction, I'm always up for it. Find a good book, just let me know.
Yeah, and that's a lot. Like I've read a lot of trashy fiction, so I as long as it's good. Like I've read a lot of Japanese light novels.
Yes, I've read a lot of shitty mangas myself, so I'm right there with you.
Mangas and light novels, yeah. Light novels can especially be bad.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I had like I think all the Harry Potter posting and the fucking Game of Thrones posting and all the stupid normie books.
I mean, if you want me to come on,
look at reading in disgust, and that's why I like at least Western novels in disgust. So I'm good thing I've been rehabilitated a bit. Actually,
if you want me to come on here and to shit on Game of Thrones for like an hour, I'm 100%.
I haven't read it. I've only watched a TV show.
I read it and I watched the TV show. I can bitch about both.
Well, I mean, I haven't technically read it, so it'd be kind of dishonest. But maybe we could just do like a Game of Thrones shit posting stream. But maybe I would just do that on my channel instead of
like
RYB.
I've had a rant for the past 3 years that I just kind of continuously hone.
Can light novels be part of RYB? Yeah, but I'd prefer it'd be hard to fill like even 90 minutes. So we'd have to read like 1 or 2 or something like that.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised we got an hour and a half with Snow Crash. It's not like the most
deep book.
Yeah, like it's pretty basic.
Like it doesn't raise that many outside of the whole linguistics thing. It's not like it's raising a million questions that we can pontificate about.
Yeah,
I think Seven Eves will be much better for that because it's recent sci-fi, it's hard sci-fi, it raises a lot of moral questions and some interesting questions about the future. So I think
morality, my favorite.
Yeah, it'll be really good to discuss. I think I get a lot of time out of a Seven Eves discussion. I highly recommend that book to anyone. Yeah. Sword Art Online alone proves that Game of Thrones is shit. So yeah, Tojo, if you wanted to come on, although been remiss about using your microphone before. If you want to come on and we can discuss light novels, I'm down for that. It's still books, technically. We can discuss Overlord. I've read all of that. Over fucking Overlord.
All right. Well, how about everyone just reads Kingdom, the manga Kingdom, and there we go. Perfect.
It's like longer than Snow Crash. Like way longer.
Yeah, way longer. It's like almost 600 chapters right now.
And with like 20 pages each.
Mm-hmm.
Ridiculous.
It's still a great read. I would suggest it to anyone.
Yeah. I don't think we'll be doing manga. I think light novels. Just
You couldn't do manga. It's a visual. You need
yeah,
to be able to.
it's visual.
You know.
Kojo can talk about anime books. Yeah, I mean, if people who don't want to read real books want to talk about light novels, I've read a fair few, and I'm down to read them because I've immersed myself in light novels, which is, I know it sounds like a really, like, why would you do that to yourself? I wanted to stay on top of the anime trends. And some of them are entertaining, and then they jump the shark, and then I drop them and stop reading them. And as long as I keep it as sort of like disposable entertainment, and I know I'm not going to get invested in it, and I just want to like kill time reading it, then I do it. But obviously, it's probably not optimal. Real books. I mean, let's be fair. Like things that are typed by Japanese people on like in schools on the shitter, and then translated by some like undergrad like nerd neat in his room, and then posted to a blog on the website. Is that real books? No.
I mean, Tojo, if you want to read that, I'm fucking all for it. Julius Caesar's my boy. I could talk about Julius Caesar for like 3 hours.
I had a book list, but Notepad showed it. What did he? Commentary by Julius Caesar. Maybe you could read stuff like that, I guess. I mean, I'm up for almost anything, really.
I mean, at some point we're gonna have to. If you're gonna talk about Caesar at all, you got to talk about his conquests in Gaul or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
That'd be a fun book to read. Just because that'd be a fun book to read, and if only just because you gotta kind of like figure out where Caesar is like embellishing onto his facts.
Oh, all
Like
all history is fucking embellished. Even modern history is embellished. It's hilarious. I don't know why people trust history so much.
But Caesar basically wrote a book about his conquest in Gaul, and it's just basically him sucking his own dick for the whole thing.
Well, yeah. Honorary Locke episode. Well,
you have to read Locke.
I can't, dude. I've read Locke 5 times for school and discussed it 5 times for school. I can't do it anymore.
Like I'm not a philosopher.
I can't do it.
I'm not a mathematician. I'm not going to read like any of these like super big brain bullshit. I'll read history. That's my deal.
I mean, history is like half poetry, half fiction, right? Half
pretty much.
Fact. So 150%. That kind of describes history in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. Half poetry, part fiction, part nonfiction.
Yeah, it's very hard to tell where it all starts and ends. Like if you look at the modern like average school book rendition of World War II, so it does no justice, or it gives like barely any useful information to anything. No. And that's like happened not even 60 years ago. And it's like complete nonsense. And so there's no point in history where you could just like look at a historical record and be like, oh, that happened.
Obviously, this is exactly what happened, guys.
All enlightenment offers are retards. Monarchism is the final red. I've always seen you like monarch posting Enclave, but I don't know. I mean, do you have any like modern monarchist books that'd be fun to read?
I mean, I'm more like libertarian and ANCAP than anything.
I don't know. I don't even know where my political ideology lies anymore. I'm just kind of.
I hold freedom as the highest regard. That's how I look at it. You know, I just want freedom for me and everyone else, and it's a very selfish ideology, and I completely understand that. But
yeah, I kind of agree with the sentiment, but I just don't think you can even like saying that's your sentiment and then practicing it doesn't lead. Like there's this whole other like politics has become this whole other process, or it has always been this process into which you can't even if you can't have any ideas or meaning, you want to accomplish your goal.
Yeah, I look at it more of my ideology than my politics, if you get what I'm saying. It's you know, they're separate things in my mind. Like I try to pursue to be free as in my my everyday life. But when it comes to politics, I'm pretty apathetic. Just because I plan on actually, it's funny. I actually plan on getting into local government here.
You think monarchism is dead? Hence, there's a little writing on it. I'm sure you could find a modern monarchist writing if you looked for it. Wasn't there that one guy that always gets shit posted on poll?
Do you want me to say Kaiser the right way? Is that what you're talking about, Tojo?
J. Kaiser 187.
J. Kaiser.
Ave, true the Kaiser.
He's the emperor of blood sports.
Got that image.
Which is fucking retarded because Caesar wasn't even the fucking emperor. Like, come on, guy.
It's a meme image that he didn't even make that makes fun of him. Don't worry about
it. I'm just saying, like, come on. You should know that Caesar wasn't an emperor. Even Augustus wasn't. He was the first man in Rome. Like, they had a title for it. What was it?
It just scares me thinking about, and 7 Eves gets into this a little bit about how, like, in the far future, all this like stupid fucking data will be archived, and people will just like watch a YouTube video, or like they'll just like watch live video feeds of people being fucking retarded, and they'll be assessing history on those grounds. and 7 Eves kind of gets into that. It's pretty funny. Kind of the
I think it's fun. Like, I really wish we could see 200 years in the future just to like have everyone like looking back at YouTube and like Facebook with like this archaeological idea of like,
yeah,
what were these people doing back then? And then you just go on there and they're just like, fucking hail Hortler. And you're like, who's Hortler?
Yeah, like imagine in 20 years, some celebrity or some person just becomes like a really important political figure, and then they just look up his like DeviantArt accounts and his like YouTube shit posting as a child. It's just gonna be fucking like silly, really silly in the future.
I can't wait. I really wish I would be around to look at it or to see it.
Degenerates like you belong on a cross, the default form of governance of all humans. Well, monarchism is not the default form of governance of all humans. That is an elder council. This is a default form of governance. But it is the sort of...
I'm with Dimitri.
The default form of governance has always been the dude with the biggest dick. Well, true, but it usually in pre-Neolithic times, it was always just learned elders had all the knowledge because they managed to get past age 30, so they were in charge.
Yeah, Dimitri still speaking truth.
Kill all your enemies and you win. Or subvert their minds and make them into your slaves.
Or you could go with the Judean way and just, you let them fuck your wives, and then you win.
If you kill your enemies, they win.
Yeah, like, come on now.
Monarchs don't have counselors at education? No, they do, but I'm saying the most common form of government throughout like human history on a time scale is definitely just tribal elder council.
Yeah, like
not with like just community elected old guy. Nothing to do with
making it to 40 back then was a big deal.
The genealogical lines came later, and I think it improved things in terms of actually having a coherent society that moved towards goals. But obviously before that, it was just elder council, which were sort of just focused on getting by. And you can transcribe a Stefan Molyneux video and then remove that.
No.
I mean, yeah, it's hard, man. It's hard. Like we didn't get too many viewers for this stream, and it's like people don't want to hear about books.
I'm not gonna
care
lie.
about books.
I think over a long period of time, you might get a lot of watches on this video, just because there's not a lot of like videos about snow.
I mean, yeah, I get decent views on all the RYB episodes, just because I'm sure people will like look up the book and like this is the only thing about the book like made any time recently.
And so a nice little deep dive about the book will probably get, in my opinion, quite a few views.
Sure, yeah.
It just probably won't get it right away because they got to search for it.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't really live stream. Like, if I was just cared about like getting live stream numbers, I would stream on Twitch and be like a huge like Twitch faggot. I mean, I just do it on YouTube because I can hit a button and like be recording a video, and it's like a thing that exists. And it's like I can interact with the community. Like it's the whole point. This is a community. I wanna sort of guide my own reading with a community of people, make it more fun, engaging for myself. Justin will remember to like Democritus, and these will be his magnum opus. I certainly hope not. Hope this will not be my magnum opus. I mean, I have been working on various fictional works. I sort of dropped them for a bit to do this stupid YouTube shit. But I think I'm gonna try to ease back into that. Be ruled by a scholar is wholly voluntary. Good king forces beneficial government practice on conquered people. Yeah, I get it. Philosopher king, be great. I get it, man. I've said this before, but there's no perfect system, and looking for one is kind of flawed. There's preferable systems, and you could have an opinion on which system you'd prefer, and that your opinion could probably be better justified than someone else's opinion. But ultimately, you're not going to find one that just like solves, like even the particular problems you think that you suffer from now are probably not going to be solved if you change the system. Wow, streams will be Jeff's magnum opus. Oh no, I got to get to work on my my visual novels. Got to use my paid pick money to commission art for these visual novels.
All right. Well, I have to go take a piss. So
yeah, I mean, we can just wrap up. It's an hour 50 minutes. The fictional books are just less to like just argue about.
Oh yeah, there's not a whole lot of arguing going on.
Yeah. All right, so you can go take your piss, I guess. Anyone in chat have any books they wanted to read anytime soon? Any like in December at all? Just in the month of December, generally speaking. You're interested in the Chad monarchist aesthetic? I don't know about that. Sounds like a LARP to me. If a dictatorship mirrors the kingdom of God, Plato is right. Then that's an oof. Read Siege, already did it. Be ruled by the skull. Other councils don't project power. Monarchs project power. I didn't say they were better. I said they were more common. I was countering your point that monarchy is the most common form of government, which is definitely not the case. Read Siege again. I didn't mind the book, but I'm not going to read that book for a long while. Like, it was a little bit edgy. We're not going to touch Siege. But unironically, if people do want to read like a handful of light novels for an episode, I'll do that. I just need people to talk about books or just talk to in general. Like, what, you want to have a conversation, bro? Come on. All right. Well, this was fun. We'll have Diogenes on next week on the 9th. Next Sunday, not this Sunday, but the Sunday after. We'll be talking about an edgelord black-pilled book that Diogenes probably gets a lot of his ideology from. So I guess that'll be funny. We look forward to that. And thanks for tuning in.